When I first started in my role as a junior product manager, I made many mistakes. Of course, making mistakes is a natural part of learning, but I felt so incompetent in my role as a PM because of the mistakes I was making, and I was beating myself about them all the time. Now, some years later, I understand that most of these mistakes are universal to early PMs and actually easy to avoid when you're aware of them. So in this video, I'm sharing with you 10 of my own mistakes that I was making early in my career as a PM to help raise your awareness of them. But before that, if you just got hired as a PM and you're wondering, what in the world do I do now? I'm actually here to help you out. My name is Jelena and I'm a VP of product in a remote startup, and I've been doing product for over 5 years. If your job currently feels like everything everywhere all at once, I created this channel to help you master product management with confidence and clarity every step of the way. Without further ado, let's get into the video. The first step in fixing any mistake is awareness. Once you're aware of what's not working, then it's relatively easy to come up with a plan to actually solve it. My idea with this video was to share some of my own mistakes, but I wouldn't be a product manager if I didn't interview a few other PMs about the mistakes they were making early on in their careers. And lo and behold, 8 PMs I actually interviewed pretty much listed the same mistakes as I did that they were making early on in their careers. This is just to show you that you're not crazy or incompetent if you're making any of these mistakes that I will be sharing in this video today. So my mistake number 1 is not delegating. When I was starting out, the prevalent discourse around product manager role was that the PM is the mini CEO of the product, and as such, the PM is responsible for ensuring product success at any cost. So this meant if you needed to QA something, you did that. If you needed to code to get your product out, you did that. You do whatever it takes. So while I do agree that the PMs are responsible for ensuring the success of their own product, there is a fine line between ensuring the product success by derailing people around important problems and exhibiting toxic behavior in the form of micromanaging your entire team and trying to do all the work by yourself. Unfortunately, in the early days, the latter was me. In those early days, I took all the work on myself. I didn't trust my teammates, so I double-checked or triple-checked a lot of the work, and I didn't literally let anyone help me out. I was hogging all the work that needed to be done and acting as a bottleneck because every single decision had to be made through me. Of course, this behavior was not sustainable and I burnt out at some point, and also not delegating any of the work affected my relationship with my team. So if you're having a hard time delegating, you might want to reconsider empowering your team with the right knowledge so they can do their work autonomously of you and you remove yourself as the bottleneck. I believe it's Marty Kagan who said, if you're only using your engineers to code, you're getting only 50% of their value. And that is the mistake number 2, using your engineers only to code. I do agree with Marty's statement now, but a few years ago, I quite honestly just didn't get it. My belief back then was that engineers code, and it was my job as the PM to define and feed them the work that they needed to do. This means that I'd make all the product decisions and they just needed to type the code. Easy, right? I know. It's almost insulting, but in my defense, it didn't come from a bad place. I believe that I was actually being helpful and saving them the trouble. The challenge when you're using your engineering team just to code is that you're missing out on the unique perspective they're able to actually provide you. Also, engineers in most cases are great problem solvers who can actually help you out solve product challenges more effectively, especially when you're a non-technical PM. So why wouldn't you actually involve them more into things that are not just coding? And finally, if you don't educate your engineering team about the users, the problem you're trying to solve as a team, and how it all fits in within company strategy and product strategy, chances are your engineering team will not be motivated or empowered to take more active role in the development of the product. So it's kind of on you to get them involved to help you out make some of the product decisions together as a team. So not just to help you out, but to kind of have them participate as equals. The next mistake builds on top of the previous one. So mistake number 3 is being too protective of the development team. In the early days, I was quite overprotective of the development team. What this looked like in my case was not only that I was making most of the decisions myself, as I said earlier, but I was also digesting every bit of work that needed to be done in the smallest bite-sized pieces. I wrote extremely detailed user stories, and I didn't leave much room for the engineers to make their own decisions. I planned every little bit down to the T. Basically, I did everything so that engineers could only think about writing the actual code and reading the details of my user stories. This was honestly an absolute mess because I didn't consult anyone from the development team about how the stories should be split and if it was even realistic for them to develop them in a way that I defined it. This created dependency problems, and in the end the team just ignored how my stories were split altogether and delivered the work in bulk, which then defied completely the purpose of user stories. If there's one thing I wish I didn't do, it's definitely this mistake. Today I believe that not every little product decision needs to be made by the PM, and I understand that it's completely unnecessary to protect the development team to the point of taking all the power away from them. In the early days of my career, I was extremely delivery focused, and I believe this was related to me being part of the development team as a QA before I transitioned into the product manager role. So focusing on delivery or on outputs over outcomes is my mistake number 4. As a junior PM, I was very focused on keeping the whole development team busy coding, adding new features, refactoring parts of the application, just pushing code, just get it out to production. In doing that, I was very output focused. My main concern was how much code was being pushed to production, but at the same time, I was not very outcome focused, meaning I was not paying much attention to the value that code was creating for our users, number one, and then for our business as well. As a result, the impact we were creating with the work that was being shipped was low and wasn't moving metrics ahead or solving the right problems. Focusing on delivery also impacted my credibility with my own team and with the leadership team because I was not creating impact but shipping low-value code to production. I was just shipping changes that didn't really create much value. These days, I prefer to work backwards. First, by understanding what is the outcome I want to create for the users and for the business, and then strategically selecting together with the team what will deliver that will drive that outcome that we are after. So not only that I do that, but I obviously encourage my own teams and product managers I work with to work this way. And before we continue to the next 5 mistakes, I wanted to let you know that I'm doing 20-minute free consultations over on Zoom. So if you're a junior PM facing a challenge and you want to have a chat about it, please feel free to set up a call with me. The scheduling link is in the description box down below. So on to the next reason. So I made many development-related mistakes as I shared earlier, and shipping too big is another one of them. So that's the mistake number 5. This, of course, is challenging, not to say kind of stupid, especially when you're in the early days of your startup, when you're still trying to figure out your product. So when you ship too big, what effectively happens is that you put all your eggs in one basket instead of strategically spreading your eggs in different baskets to see which egg will hatch. Okay, I think I went a little bit overboard with the egg metaphor, but I believe you understood what I actually mean. So instead of shipping big, I learned to adopt the mindset of experimentation. And in doing that, I spend more time evaluating which opportunities are high leverage and how to solve them in a way to drive user value and the business value. And in doing that, I focus more on strategically investing in the product instead of just shipping giant high-risk features. And that leads us to mistake number 6, which is putting too much emphasis on being right. When I started out as a PM, I transitioned from a QA to a PM role within the same company. I was actually the second person to get hired in the product I was managing. So I was there literally from the beginning. And as a result, I got pretty emotionally connected to the product I was working on. And I really cared about the product and the problem that we were solving. While there's nothing wrong with being excited about what you do, it all became somewhat problematic when I started putting emphasis on being right all the time. I was also using my own opinion to make product decisions and generally taking any disagreement with my own opinion very, very personally. This was problematic because I was not always right and I didn't know best. If I were to do it all over again, I would put systems in place to leverage the power of the team and multiple perspectives to collectively find the answers and make decisions. But I didn't, so that's why this is my mistake number 6. And while we're on topic of pushing opinions, not interviewing customers is probably the biggest mistake I made as a PM, and this is my mistake number 7. It should probably be my mistake number 1. Having a user's perspective is probably one of the most important things you can do as a PM. Literally, your job as a PM is to be the advocate for the user and the expert in the user problem. And you won't build that understanding sitting in the office staring at the screen. This was definitely the number one mistake I made as a junior PM. I used to look at data and user session recordings and support tickets, but when it came to talking to user, I was a bit late to the party, and I was really missing out on learning who my users truly were and how I could actually help them better to solve the challenge that they were actually facing. I want to mention that when it comes to user interviewing, it's not about just about talking to users, but also how to talk to users so you don't end up leading your users to just validate your own opinions. Speaking about wanting to be right. There is a great book that actually helped me in doing this, kind of understanding best practices of user interviewing called the MOM test. And I also would love to share my own process of interviewing in a video. So if that's something that really interests you, please drop me a comment. And speaking of users and engagement, if you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up. As a PM, you know how important such signals are for the algorithm training. I'd really appreciate it. I mentioned earlier at some point that I worked in an early stage startup, so in terms of processes and artifacts, there was really not so much in place, and also it was like years ago. In the beginning, most of the decisions were quickly made on Slack and in calls. We moved fast, not always the smartest. There were a few people on the team, so having much documentation really didn't matter that much, as we all knew kind of what decisions were being made and what we had to do. Unfortunately, I tried to keep things in my own head for far, far too long, and I made decisions ad hoc until I finally figured out that what I needed to do is start writing PRDs. So not start writing PRDs on time is my mistake number 8. When I finally started writing PRDs, I externalized my thinking and I was able to invite other team members to help me scope the problems correctly. This also helped me take in a different perspective. In doing that, I was able to explain why the specific problem mattered. It became clear to me what I didn't know, and I also documented decisions we made together as a team and why we made decisions we made. Writing PRDs helped me build understanding and credibility with my team, and also it helped me fact-check my own thinking for any biases, because they become obvious only when you start writing. I don't write many PRDs these days myself, but I read and review many, and I can't explain how valuable they are for me to understand what my team is actually doing. I would also love to record a video taking you through my own PRD templates, so if that's something that interests you, please also drop me a comment. All right, 2 more mistakes to go. So I'm sure you heard about the acronym HIPPO, which stands for Highest Paid Person's Opinion. And that's exactly the trap I fell into as a junior PM. So building what the C-suite wanted is my mistake number 9. So in the early days, I found myself just taking the opinion of our C-suite and just building whatever they expected, ending up with features that I didn't understand why we were building at all. So we kind of had a bit of a feature creep situation there. While I know that the leadership team has a unique and valuable perspective, and oftentimes they do have great ideas that work, it's very problematic as a PM to just jump in and building solutions proposed by the leadership team or anyone else. If I were in this position now, I'd drill deep into why a specific feature is important, what is it supposed to solve, and for who. So what I would do today is I'd help the leadership team get the answers to these open questions before jumping into just building a solution that they proposed. It's more valuable to align on the problem and then assess what is the best solution instead of just building a solution without the fundamental understanding of the actual problem. So just doing what I'm told is my mistake number 9. And this leads us to the final mistake, which is not working enough on stakeholder management. If I had done this in the early days of my career, I would have saved myself and my team a lot of rework, waste of time, and low-value opportunities and late-stage blow-ups that we all hate. I'd now recommend syncing with your stakeholders after each product development milestone. This means aligning on your product goal, the opportunity you have identified and validated, aligning on solution design, development updates, and launch iteration decisions. So gathering input and feedback every step of the way would have saved me so much headache and frustration, and it would have saved my stakeholders from being surprised, sometimes shocked, with the things that I have launched. Just recently, I defined with my team the stakeholder alignment rituals we're doing in our company so that we can kind of manage all this effectively, and I would love to share this with you. So if you're interested, drop me a comment. All right, so those were 10 mistakes I made as a junior PM. I'm very curious to hear what are some of the mistakes that you made or you're making currently. Please share your experience in the comments below. I read and respond to every single comment. I'm actually very excited to receive them. Thank you for watching this video. Somewhere on the screen is another video from me that you might enjoy. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this video, and I'll see you in the next one. And until then, keep building, but smart.